you never know what tomorrow may bring, right? Or what opportunities may present itself at the most uncanny times. Play the long game. Go shadow the role you potentially want to be someday. And if that is what you aspire to be, reach out.
What advice would you give someone that maybe is in that position where they're like, hey, I want more, or I want out of the clinical side of things?
I think you just got to stay the course, right? You never know what tomorrow may bring, right? Or what opportunities may present itself at the most, uncanny times. And I think it is hard as some days think, man, there's no opportunity for growth. Because I even kind of at a point in my career where I was a team lead, still as the rad tech, even before I was supervisor, like, man, I feel like I'm stuck. Play the long game. I know today's world is, we're pinging, we're bouncing from job to job, and that's not a bad thing. You can gain experience. I did some ED overnight rad tech coverage, learned a bunch of CT, learned a bunch about emergency medicine, doing that for a few years while I worked at Iowa Ortho. But I think just, staying persistent in, you might not have the true answer of what you want to be right now if you're in that clinician, that ATC role, or PT or rad tech role. But I think as you, again, show up every day willing to learn, right? I think that's one big thing that I will always drive home is like, if you don't know and you want to be a leader, okay, you're a rad tech. You don't know, you're taking x-rays. You don't know much about the billing. But if you start to learn and grow from your business office, and go shadow the role you potentially want to be someday, right? Like if someone, a rad tech called me and said, hey, Cole, I want to potentially be a director someday of an orthopedic group, I'd be happy to bring them on and have them shadow or ask questions and do all things I can. I think a lot of leaders out there across the country would be happy to do so if someone reached out. I don't know how many ATCs reach out to a CEO and say, of a big PT room, say, hey, I come learn more. I'm sure they'd be willing to help, though, right? I think administration and executive directors are way more helpful than maybe sometimes they get the take is they're kind of standoffish. Maybe you're not super friendly, but I think a lot of them would help. And if that is what you aspire to be, reach out.
Definitely. I think the shadowing piece, because people also get caught up in the titles and they get caught up in kind of the flashiness of it all, but they don't realize sometimes the additional responsibilities that come along with those titles. And so if you're in a position where, you're an athletic trainer, you're a PT, and you take care of your patients each day, but then you get to go home at 5 and nobody's calling your phone, nobody is bugging you about something, and there's no true deadlines, right? You got to get your notes in on time, but you're not tasked with setting up an entire new EMR, and you're not tasked with getting an ASC stood up and staffed. And those are the type of things that I think people sometimes they don't have a realistic understanding as to what it all entails until they shadow, and then they're like, actually, I love my job, and maybe I just need to find a group that fits with more of my values or the culture, or maybe I'm moving into a team lead type of role, or, I take on different responsibilities within the clinical side still. But I also think there's an element of people that don't understand, it's not all rainbows and butterflies at the top either. There's a new set of challenges.
For sure, right? And I love my job, but you can ask my wife, there's a lot of late nights. There's, last night on the way drive home, 40-minute conversation trying to wrap the day up, right? A lot of 6:15 exec meetings, right? A lot of late night meetings. This phone doesn't stop ringing because I've got not only a CEO, I've got 18 other guys that like to give some opinions as well. So it's
yeah. And I think that's a key takeaway too. But it sounds like from what, and correct me if I'm wrong, but from what you've said, it sounds really like, don't be afraid to show up for a job that you might not meet kind of the job description for, but you have the capability to learn, to be creative and resourceful, and to be kind to people and willing. I think that's really the biggest thing is, they might have the job description, but their attitude sucks, and they're not on time, and they're not helpful, and they're, brash, and people don't want to report into them. And it's like, what's better, in my mind, it's someone like you that took the time to get to know it, but did it in a way with really good, authentic leadership.
Amen. Right. That's life in general. Just show up with a positive attitude. Things can be so much better, right? That's half of it. I feel like you can do that. You're already ahead in the game, right? Just showing up and being positive, and just be willing to all hands on deck, ditch your ego. You're not bigger than anybody else. You're going to go a long way.
Definitely. And what's your favorite thing about being a leader?
Man, that's a good question. I love all of it, right? I mean, I don't manage my team. I work with them. And honestly, truthfully, I mean, and the other thing I'd recommend, put people in place that are smarter than you. And I'm never going to be a smartest person about, billing or rev cycle or, now I've got an awesome work comp team. I've got my whole team that manages my clinics, right? That's just it. Don't be afraid of, but people who are smarter than you around you. The goal is to grow them and you're all going to benefit, right, from that. So I think that's super important, and just be transparent and honest with people. That's with our physicians too, right? I mean, if we don't know the answer, need to find something out. We're going to tell them that we're not going to make something up. So I think that's obviously super pivotal as well.
Exactly.